I believe that you are a powerful human being. And I believe that you are not broken. I believe that you are whole and perfect and amazing and worthy and valuable exactly as you are in this moment. And I believe that you need a little bit of room to expand that. Just a little bit of room to fall in love with it, to fall in love with the process, to remember. Because the thing about that is it's a reclamation of the self, it's a remembrance.
Welcome to Women Thrive Podcast. This is where you'll get to hear incredible stories of female entrepreneurs, business owners, women from all walks of life. Myself, Raimonda Jan, and my co-host Abigail will be interviewing incredible women, hearing inspiring stories of women from all around the world. I have no doubt that you will find something that will be life-changing for you. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and join us for our future episodes. Hello and welcome to today's podcast episode for Women Thrive. I'm so excited to have you here for this episode with my incredible guest, Sapha. Hello, how are you doing, Sapha?
I'm doing so good. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
Me too. I know that today's conversation is going to be really juicy for our audience. Just because we got to know each other for a few months now, and I know the kind of speaker that you are and how passionate you are really about women empowerment, which is what we're all about at Women Thrive.
It's been a joy and a pleasure to share space with all of the women of Women Thrive, but with yourself especially. And I'm so excited to sink my teeth into the conversation.
Today is going to be exciting podcast, so I encourage you to definitely stick around till the end. But before we begin, I'd love to introduce you my speaker today, Sapha Pardo Heckman, who is a feminine embodiment and empowerment mentor. So she supports powerful women on their journey back to self so they can live an abundant lives filled with love, purpose, and fulfillment. So she helps them with embodying feminine self-authority through the power of mindful sovereignty and self-seduction. As a feminine embodiment and empowerment mentor, she guides high-achieving women who feel disconnected from their true selves to reclaim their inner power and purpose. Sapha, tell us a little bit more about yourself, your journey, so my audience could get to know you.
A little bit about myself. I am a truly passionate lover of the divine feminine aspects of this life that we get to live. And really, how I got there was by losing myself. I grew up in a household that went through a lot of changes. It wasn't safe all the time. It certainly didn't feel safe for myself to exist as I was in that particular place. And I went through a couple of really key moments in my life that were very traumatic. Everything from familial sexual abuse to just dealing with a heavy eating disorder that stayed with me for a long time. And that eventually led to me as an adult to be in a relationship that was very toxic. And I stayed in that relationship for at least 14 years, 13 years. So it just has been quite the journey. And along the way, I think that really what awoken my heart to the power of that feminine embodiment essence and that feminine power, the divine feminine, was that there is this beautiful point of connection with self that we miss when we enter into the realm of self-development, self-help, self-growth, self-love. And for me, I had heard about these things and I wanted to get there so badly. In my mind, there was nothing so simple or so delicious as the idea of finally loving myself. But there was always a tether to it that had an approximation of, yes, I can love myself when I lose X amount of weight, when I make X amount of money in my business, when it was always tethered to a conditional. It was never, I can love myself, period. And it really hit home for me when, after many years of doing the work, going to therapy, reading self-help books, doing yoga, meditation, all of these things, I found myself in a little ball, crumbled in the bathroom of my house, crying, desperately desolate because I felt unseen, unloved, alone, uncherished, and completely lost. I felt stuck. It felt like everyone else around me was living their lives and I was in limbo. And it really hurt. I mean, it was a really painful point in my life to sit with. I thought at that time that the goal was to move beyond my eating disorder and to bring that feeling to the women around me. And that really was where the passion for the work that I do started. But I didn't realize how much deeper it went, how much it really came down to the disconnect with self concept, self love, and self embodiment, really where that was. And so that moment crumpled on the floor where I was finally able to release and lean back and receive and observe and open the floodgates to the parts of myself that had been shut down for so many years, which all had to do with aspects of this divine feminine archetypal figure. When I finally tapped into that, that's when I started seeing shifts in my life that were very drastic in a good way. They saved my life. This moment in time saved my life. And I know it saved a lot of my own clients' lives as well. So that's about me.
Wow. Wow. So much to unpack. And I know as our listeners are listening to this, I'm sure everyone's having thoughts and ideas, perhaps of their own lives or their own journeys. But you mentioned something that you said there was a disconnect. There was a disconnect between who you really, your essence of who you are. Where do you think that disconnect happened to start with?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I could take it back as far back as when I was like 5 years old. I think for me, the second the safety in my world crumbled to pieces, that disconnect started taking place because it meant that it was no longer safe to just be who I was. And it makes me emotional because I had to fit myself into a mold, to my perception, to little 5-year-old me thought that I had to be in this particular mold of doing for others and self-sacrificing and making sure everyone else was taken care of except for me in order to be welcomed and loved and cherished. So that was the first sort of click. And out of that, I'd say that if we were looking at this almost like in nature, if we were thinking of this like a tree, I think that was the trunk. And from that trunk, many different branches, it spread out and it just became this growing, living, shifting thing. And the funny thing is, and I think what really deepened it for me was that I was watching this same or very similar type of wounding take place in the people and the world around me. I will never forget one of the first things that really hammered it home for me was I had my niece was 6 years old at this time. She came up to me and with tears in her eyes, like really truly heartbroken, asked me if I thought that she was fat. And I think it really just sunk for me. I didn't want her to go through this world fractured and feeling like she was less than just because she had attached her perception of selfhood to something that a society had described as good or bad. And it broke me down. It just hit home so hard that from that moment on, I really vowed to change that, not just for her, but for myself and for every other woman in this world. Because it was just, I think I really noticed it then. I knew that it was an internal struggle, but I didn't realize how much I saw it everywhere at the grocery store with people, random people, strangers in front of me talking about how much they needed to like cut calories this week because blah, 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 like things like those. I always laugh when I talk about this stuff because in a way it sounds a little superficial, but what it is, at least in my experience personally, and from what things that I've seen with my clients, and even from talking to my niece now as she's like older, is that what it does is these moments of disconnect from selfhood, these moments of distancing from self concept, these moments of othering of the self inform the whole of our existence. And they have made it so easy, especially for women, to become subservient and to become smaller, to shrink our voices down, to allow ourselves to be underfoot, to really lose our voices. And that's just not okay. Like, it's just not okay. And again, it's so funny to me because from the outside looking in, talking about this, the way that we relate to our bodies and to our food, not only do we already know about this and it's sort of been spoken of ad nauseum in a way, but it could seem very surface level stuff. However, it's the things that go underneath that that really start making a difference. It's because this belief has been cemented so deeply into my mind, my subconscious, my heart, my soul, that opens the pathway to all of these other things where I have lost myself, where I have believed that I'm just this label, just this thing of a person, that it doesn't really ever reach the vastness, the broad spectrum of value and worth that I have as a person in this world. So that's, for me, if I could take it back personally, it would be literally as a 5-year-old and going through the things in my world that made me feel unsafe that informed that decision.
Mm. I think it happens quite a lot. I know I've experienced this later in life in my mid 20s where I lost my identity. But I think trauma creates that for us where we feel disconnected from who we are and our existence. And that's where it starts to manifest itself, as you say, almost people pleasing and trying to be something for everyone and doing the right thing and mold yourself into what people expected you to be, which is not you. It's not your true, authentic self. And you can't really bring the best out of yourself into this world as your true, authentic self because you've lost that part. And that's incredibly difficult experience to go through in life. What were the things that started to manifest in your life as a result of that? So, what were the challenges that you started to face in your life?
I think it's also important to understand sometimes we relate to the idea of trauma as it has to be something monumental. And in my case, of course, there was sexual abuse. There were monumental things. However, what I always say is it doesn't even have to look that big. It's just a moment and an instance in time where your nervous system is no longer feeling safe and at ease. And it could be something as easy as you reach for the cookie jar, your mom slapped your hand, and you were in shock. And all of a sudden, it's really uncomfortable to reach for things that you want because you feel like if you desire something, you're a bad person. It's important to understand that trauma doesn't have to be massive and it doesn't have to look dramatic enough or break you down enough for it to be worthy of your attention and your love and your curiosity. And why that's important is because from that moment, what started happening was the things that shifted in my world when I recognized that there was that disconnect from self concept, that disconnect from true self love, that disconnect from the person that I am today is what started to shift was the dynamics in my world, my relationships started to change. The way that I showed up to places changed. The way that I spoke, the way that I carried myself, the way that I invited things into my world and the things that I invited into my world completely changed. So I'd gone from feeling very much at the effect of and believing that the world was against me and that everything that I did was going to turn to crap and that everything was just going to be bad for me always. I went from really living at the effect to feeling very much in the position of I'm at the driver's seat and I get to choose. And the fun thing and also the interesting thing about that was that it was a very dynamic relationship with self that I developed because I knew that sometimes I was going to choose to keep going down a path that maybe I knew logically wasn't great. However, I wanted to keep moving through it until I felt like it was time to make the transition. And so I gave myself permission to not judge myself so harshly. I gave myself the permission to understand that growth sometimes means observation and not immediate correction. I gave myself permission to understand that that organic change was going to seep into other parts of my life without noticing and that it was going to be out of my hands completely. And so letting go of the idea of control was huge. And anyone who's ever been through an eating disorder knows that that's one of the reasons why we go there because we can control it. So the interesting thing was, so once that started taking place and I really started falling in love with myself and dating myself and courting myself. That's why my passion is this idea of self-seduction and courtship is because once I really started doing that, then the things that weren't in my control were the most beautiful breaking points and the most transformational parts of my life. For example, my really toxic relationship started deteriorating very fast. It was really bad to begin with. It was never good. It started toxic. It stayed toxic. But what started happening was because I was taking the steering wheel and I was the one at the helm and I was the queen of what I was doing. The things that were toxic in the relationship that had been tolerated up until then were no longer being tolerated, which started causing problems, which started causing more fights, which started causing more cracks. And eventually, all it took was one simple question from a friend of mine for me to be like, the hell, this is enough. Enough is enough. Like, I'm done with this. And have the courage to leave, which is if anybody who's been in a toxic relationship for a long time knows it's very difficult to do. And so for me, that was the most beautiful part of this process was the observation of what happens when we just get curious. Like, just get curious and be brave enough to ask questions and observe and not force yourself or judge yourself for doing or not doing, asking or not asking, like changing or not changing. Because I think a lot of times that's the thing is we go on this healing journey and we think, well, now I've got the psychological receipts and I've got the self-help books and I've got the podcast and I've got all of this information, and the information is going to mean that from here on out, I'm never going to mess up. I'm never going to make mistakes. I'm going to make all the perfect decisions. I'm going to not let the trauma guide me. And that's not it at all. It's more a process of existence where everything comes in. I always use with my clients the example of a tapestry. What you're doing is you've been building this beautiful, artful mastery of a tapestry of your life. This is going to be like, by the time that we move on to a different plane of existence, this is what your life gets to look like. That I'm thinking as spirit, we get to look at from afar and be like, oh, that was the art that I created. And so what we're doing is we are taking weave strands off that don't belong there, that might have been like a hiccup. We're pulling them back. We're reweaving new ones in, and we are building onto that. And it doesn't get to be a perfect process, but it is a process, meaning it continues to grow the more we center ourselves into that space. And the thing about the trauma, just to circle back to where I started this conversation with, was like this, the thing about the trauma, we actually get to use it as a part of the weave. We get to use it as a thread and needle sometimes. We get to use it as the scissors that we need to cut something through. We get to actually utilize it. It doesn't define who we are. It doesn't mark us that way. It does, however, get to be this tool that we can use. That's one of the most powerful shifts.
Yeah, I love that. And I know you're doing now like really powerful work with women who have gone through various challenges in life, who might not be at that place where they found their true selves, their true happy, fulfilled selves. And, sometimes we feel like we're constantly on a quest. I'm on a quest, right? Better job, better pay, or better wardrobe, better husband, whatever, And I know you're a big advocate of finding everything that there is within yourself. It's not really everything we're seeking for. It's not on the outside, but on the inside. And that's where you really help women discover within themselves.
100%. And I think that that's why I love working with women who've been in the trenches for a little bit already. They're obviously, as healers, what I find is that often the reflection of ourselves is what we choose to bring to life, meaning this is who I work with. And so the women that I work with have been in the trenches for a little bit, meaning they've already done a little bit of the shadow work. They've already done a little bit of that psychological work. They've done these things, but much like myself, they've done the things, but they still feel stuck and they don't know where to go. And there's these moments where they'll look at themselves and be like, I don't even recognize myself anymore. That's a really beautiful place to come in and expand the possibility of getting to know the self. I love when they come in and I know there's something more, but I don't know how to put words to it and I can't explain it and I can't qualify it or quantify it. That's a little difficult because how do you speak to that? You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, what I love is that in all of these conversations, and I've had people who come in and they just want to find love and they just want to find money, like abundance and things. And so that's why those aspects of life are important to that. In every single person's power, I believe that you're a powerful human being. And I believe that you are not broken. I believe that you are whole and perfect and amazing and worthy and valuable exactly as you are in this moment. And I believe that you need a little bit of room to expand that. Just a little bit of room to fall in love with it, to fall in love with the process, to remember. Because the thing about that is it's a reclamation of the self, is a remembrance. It's a pause. It's an observation. It's an acknowledgement of, oh, this used to be me and this gets to be me now. And why that's powerful is because it shifts the relationship, like you said, from the outside to the inside. It is no longer about the qualifiers. It's no longer about the I love myself as long as. It's no longer about the if I can see this and qualify it and quantify it, then I will love myself. It's about entering into the relationship that will last a lifetime. Friends, family, heck, even dogs and pets will come and go, and they won't, unfortunately or fortunately, be with us forever. But you get to be in that relationship with yourself forever. And let me tell you, from someone who has experienced this firsthand, and I mean firsthand, if you do not like yourself, forget love. Sometimes self-love feels really unreachable to people because you don't even like yourself. If you can't even start with the foundation of liking yourself, this life gets to be very challenging because eventually, and you could have all the money in the world, you could have all the lovers, you could have all of the things. And I promise you, if you do not like yourself, it's still going to feel like the bottomless, endless pit that just cannot be filled. And honestly, there is nothing so painful. That is a very lonely existence. And that's the kind of lonely that you experience when you're surrounded by people. And that hurts so bad. So yeah, I love
That self-love is to say, just accepting yourself, finding your true self. I think, Sapha, I've met so many women in my journey doing this. Women in their 50s and their 60s, even their 70s, who been through life living unfulfilled, unhappy, and not true to themselves, and never really valuing themselves enough. And therefore, that manifests itself to people pleasing and self sabotage and all sorts of things. And then later on in life, when they actually find that self love, that true self acceptance, it's like you're looking at the world with different glasses because you're not constantly beating yourself up, especially if we've been through trauma and it took away your self-worth. It took away your identity. You look in a mirror and you're seeing all your flaws, and you talked about how it manifests itself in your life, also with the eating disorder. And that's just, like you say, another way to try and control the situation, but also sabotage yourself, not love yourself. And that's just so, so painful to watch. And I really want women to be empowered. And that's why I'm really passionate also about what you do, because I think it's so needed and so many more women need to discover. And I know when you come onto our calls with the fellow speakers, you say things along the line of how you can live the juiciest, the most orgasmic life ever. I was like, yes, that is Sapha all day long.
Yeah, I think we deserve it. I really, really, truly love women. I think we are just a force. I don't envision a world in which our feminine essence isn't needed or important. I can't. And it's so curious to me too, because that loss of selfhood a lot of times really does connect. So, okay. In the work that I do, we talk a lot about subconscious stuff and psychological things that I love. I'm super nerdy. I love me like a nerd stuff. So I will go into all of that. So we talk about that as an important foundation to really falling in love with yourself and living that super orgasmic life, because without it, how could you? Like, if you don't have a concept of what's going on internally and the parts of you that you yourself have dismissed as non-important, how could you possibly then live a life that feels supple and fulfilling and rich and delicious? You really couldn't. And the thing about that is that as a global community, so there's the personal subconscious wounds and there's the global subconscious wounds that we all carry. As a global community, there's been so much information about the wounds of the feminine that we have all taken onto ourselves, put on our shoulders, and essentially wore and wear still to this day as a yoke to keep us down is so heartbreaking. And one of those things is that we self identify as worthwhile or valuable enough only so long as we can attach that self worth to a label of, for example, I'm a mom, or I'm a CEO, or I'm this. And we only attach value to those things. And so the forgetting of the self, and we also dismiss the parts of the self that are very much tied to what is known as the dark feminine, meaning like the wise woman aspects of self, the ones that are going to grab you by the hand and walk you right through that underworld. And it's going to be very uncomfortable, and it's going to be very jarring, and it's going to shake you to your core. And it's meant to. It's not meant to be pretty and pink and bubbly and lovely all the time. It's meant to be in the depths, in like the muck, in the mud, in the wildness of yourself. And so that's why sometimes we find that self-reclamation happens later in life. But it takes a very long time for us to get there because we really have self-rejected the parts of ourselves that are seen as the crone essence, the crone archetype, meaning like the parts of ourselves that are wise enough to sit with the discomfort, to push into that edge, to embrace the pause between breaths, because that's what breaks you most of the time. The things that the in between, imagine as entrepreneurs, people who are listening will understand this, but imagine that you have like the goal in mind. If you want to make your first 10K, the pause in between you starting your business and you getting there is going to be the most painful, confrontational, terrifying, heartbreaking thing you will ever experience. And that is where you gain your wisdom. And that is where you gain your selfhood. Or I'll use myself as an example. The person who is in the middle, that pause in between breaths, between leaving that relationship and being free from a horrible relationship, that in between is hell. But you get to walk through hell as a queen and a sovereign of your life, because at the end of the day, this path, this chosen existence is for you, not for anyone else, not for your children, not for your spouse, not for your parents. And people sometimes hate when I say that because I know we love our little ones, but it's not. Literally, it's for you. And it's not selfishness, it's self-awareness. And so that path, that connection, it just makes the difference. And that's what I want to see more of in this world, rather than just the hyper independence, rather than just this narrative of I'm unfuckwittable. But I get it and I love it. But I'm more of the thought of like, no, not at all. Like I feel it, and I'm going to move through that feeling and show you who I am made of and choose who I am made of because I felt, rather than nothing affects me. I'm good. I'm the cool person. There's so many feminine ones that I could spend like 5 hours telling you just about that. But yeah, I love that. And I think that we're all worthy and deserving of that. We really do deserve it.
Yeah, and like I say, it doesn't have to be conditional based on your title. And I see women lose that self also in the transition of life, which you touched on in that middle part, whether you have a child and then before you get back into work, in that kind of the middle part of becoming a mother and then losing yourself or using your title, or as I say, leaving a relationship and then kind of losing yourself again before you rediscover. But that's okay. And you tied it into entrepreneurship, and it's quite right, because a lot of people want to leapfrog to success. Right? I just have my eyes on a prize and I want to get to the top, and I'm going to have these blinders on, and no matter what, I'm going to get there because I want to identify myself as a 6-figure business owner or whatever. And as you said, is that middle part. That's where you're going to learn the most. That's where you're going to have most transformation, most struggles, maybe, but the rewards, this is where you collect the jewels. And, it's similarly within our platform as well. When people come onto our community and I say, I just want to speak on your platform, and they think that is the cure to everything, that just being in front of a lot of people and getting to address a big audience. I say, no, the value of it is doing the work. It's showing up, it's being visible, getting at the edge of your comfort zone, speaking your truth, getting to do that, getting to collaborate with people. That's the magic. This is where you learn, this is where you grow, and this is where you grow your visibility, authority, all of those things, not just by getting to
Mhm.
the end result, because it's kind of, it's that moment. It's like, okay, you had that moment, but now what? Because when we do struggle with ourselves and self-worth, you're going to be continuously chasing the next big goal and the next big goal and the next big goal. I need a better car. Oh, I need now 6 figures. I need 7 figures, whatever not. And when you don't get there, or if you get there and it doesn't feel that fulfilling, the truth is because you don't have that sense of true, authentic self that is happy no matter what, whether you're walking barefoot on the beach or you're walking barefoot, on the streets. But as long as you really appreciate who you are and you remember that you are whole and you have something to offer, whether you're sitting in a Ferrari or you're sitting on a bus.
100%. And there's such a disconnect but for our minds to appreciate that. We're still waiting for that gold star, I think, from school. We just got so good at performing and showing proof positive that we were worthy of that gold star and of that appreciation and of that acolyte or of that thing that filled the little void inside of us that wasn't feeling all that love. It has to come for ourselves first because life is always going to be shifting and changing. And the one thing that I was really thinking about earlier this week too is we talk a lot in the world of, again, not because, but this is just the world that we live in. So I do bring it up consistently, but in the world of entrepreneurship, we talk a lot about like the why. Why do you do what you do? And I could sit here and be like, I want to see every woman empowered and alive and like fall in love with their lives so that they feel like their life is a romance for the edges. That is true. But if I don't start with the why at selfhood, it doesn't matter. And that's the thing that we sometimes miss in every area of our lives. It's like, I want the perfect relationship. Why? Because, I'll feel so good and it'll be nice to have a partner to share this life with. And but like, why for yourself though? And like the why for yourself is also the key that allows us to shift when, for example, oh, I had my eyes set on this goal. This is the thing I'm going to go and I'm going to go all out. And what if it all falls to pieces? And it's a question that we ask ourselves. And that I think a lot of times the self-help world has now become this rhetoric of like, no, think positive. Like, don't think that way. Don't even that idea. Just think it's going to happen, blah, blah. And I'm not that person. Like if you're really looking for acolytes and like things like those, I am so not the person for you because I'm the person that literally is going to be like, okay, walk me through that. You failed. Now what? And it's going to get really uncomfortable really quick. And sometimes you will get like, I have had clients who've gotten mad at me in the moment and then message me later, be like, I actually really get it now, but I really hated you for a second. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I can handle that. But it's because if you really walk it through and that why of your selfhood isn't there to say, you know what? I failed. Cool. What's next? Do I want to have something different? Do I want to keep going down this path? What do I want to set my sights on? What do I want my life to be like? What do I want? I. And again, I know that people are going to be like, oh my God, it's so selfish to ask about the I, me, I. But you know what? Why are you going to be asking about everybody else first? And you get to fill your cup daily. A lot of times we do forget, again, not to kind of bring this topic back because we already talked about it, but we forget who we are because we also spend too much time pouring into others and believing that they are the ultimate end all be all of our worlds. And it's like we have to center ourselves first. You center yourself, then you're able to move through. And when the things get sticky, and they're gonna get sticky time and again, no matter where you are, it's just gonna be the way that it is. Because imagine that you do finally discover, you know what, this isn't serving me anymore. This is a thing that I see a lot in relationships, but I'm starting to see more in business as well. Listen, sometimes we can love something very deeply and very dearly and be passionate about it, and it still not be right for us. And that sucks. It's easier to look at something that was hurtful. And when I was first getting divorced, I remember people asking, did someone cheat? It would have been so much easier for me to say, yeah, someone cheated, but it just wasn't serving me anymore. And if you can get to that point, then you'll understand it. And that's where that self-help, self-love truly comes in.
Yeah. And I think you strike me just a bit like me. I'm not going to be that coach that's going to sugarcoat it for you and like take you straight there. But you know what? What I can say to you, I'll walk with you through the fire.
Mhm.
You know what? We're going to get onto the other side and you can be mad at me, but we'll do it right. Because I think anything else is not sustainable. It's just not sustainable as a change. And that's why I love the work that you're doing. You're like, look, we're going to get real and raw and maybe dirty, but we're going to get through to the other side. And I think that's the trust you really want in your coach who's going to really get you there in the end.
Yeah, agreed.
Sapha, this has been a really amazing conversation. I hope our audience are leaning in and saying, I want more. Unfortunately, for today's episode of Times, but I am so excited because Sapha will be speaking at the Women Thrive Summit in March, and you'll get to hear her juicy talk in March. What can people expect that you'll talk at the Women Thrive Summit?
You can expect a lot of call to the divine feminine and to self-reclamation, and a lot of talk about what it truly means to be personally sovereign, because I have to tell you, it's worth your life.
As you heard today, that transformation is so massive. It's life changing. It's everything. I know for me, it was like that when I really found my true authentic self. Everything in my life changed. And I think that's the amazing part of what you're doing. You're really changing people's lives to the core.
Thank you. And thank you so much for sharing this space with me today. This was lovely.
It's been amazing. Sapha, so how do people get in touch with you? They feel really inspired. They're like, okay, Sapha, take me through the fire with you. How do people get in touch and maybe begin that journey?
So you can find me on Instagram at Your Soulful Goddess. This is the name of the brand that I created because at the end of the day, you are a soulful goddess. So that was what inspired the name of the company. And you can also reach out to me, info at Your Soulful Goddess. I do have a podcast called Mindfully Sovereign. So if you want to just fill your cup that day, that's what it is. So my heart is in and working heart to heart, side by side with people. So one-on-one is exactly what I do. And if that's something that you want to explore in your life, just to have that person to walk with you rather than trying to give you little step-by-step instructions, because that's not me, then yeah, you can reach out to me there anytime, any day, and I will be there for you.
Amazing. I've been stalking you a little bit lately, and I've seen that you do those juicy VIP days with people where you really take them on an amazing, just self-care experience. So tell me just a tiny bit about that.
Oh, VIP is like my heart right now. I just started doing that this year. And I only take a couple of people a year because it's so intensive. And so what it is we spend the weekend together. Right now, I'm basing them off of Nashville because it's where I live, but we spend day together and I tailor the experience to the person. So if you and I have been working on something, or if you know, for example, I just had a client who really wanted to reach the next level in her business and everything. So what we did was I put her at the Four Seasons when she stayed. We went to the spa. We spent the day at the pool. We talked about all the things that we needed to talk about with her. So did a little bit of energy healing. I gave her a little ritual. And then she messaged me when after she left, she did the ritual when she got home. She's like, I just sold my first offer. It was like the most exciting. So it's just, and each is individually tailored to people. I've also had other clients who've done other things. We focused on healing trauma. We focused on healing subconscious wounds. So again, and this is a brand new thing that I've been doing, but I like it because imagine that instead of spending a year, which I love, by the way, or 6 months with me, which those are my two offers. Instead of doing that, you spend 3 intensive, and I mean intense. It's like a detox. Like if you really needed to detox your life of things and hyper focus on what it is that you want to draw more of in your life, that's what we do on that weekend. So it's really intense. It's really fun. And I can, tailor it to whatever it is that you need. It doesn't mean that you're always going to get a day at the spa, by the way. But if you really wanted fun, we could arrange it.
But this is where the quantum leaps happen. And I don't think that it's about length of time, but it's the level of transformation. That transformation can happen really quickly. It does not need to take a year, because in a setting like this, and I always say when people come to our retreats, you collapse the time because it's what happens in that time that shifts a lot of things that does not need to take years. And that's why it's so, so powerful. So I hope more women get to
Mhm.
experience that with you.
Me too. It's amazing. It is a collapsible time phenomena. And I think it's also the fact that you don't have time to let your ego run wild with the stories. Like you're in it. It means you're embodying it. You're living it in that moment. And there's no time in between for your ego to come up and say, but like, remember when you blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Sapha, this has been amazing. I hope our audience truly enjoyed this episode. I'm so grateful to have you part of the community and have your voice on our platform. It's just a joy working with you. And I'll just put a little plug that you were on a cover of the Women Thrive magazine in August. And I think that whole vibe of the August 2023 edition was a goddess alike. So if you're interested, go and grab yourself that copy where Sapha was on the cover. Just absolutely adored you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, love. And so honored to be here.
Thank you, my love. Well, to all of our listeners, if you have enjoyed this episode, any of the notes, any of the contact details for Sapha will be in the show notes. So make sure you do connect, reach out to her if you want to really live that juicy and phenomenal life and free yourself of any worries. I think Sapha will be your girl to walk you through the fire and out on the other side. So it's been a pleasure to have you here, and I hope you do tune in into other episodes at Women Thrive. For now, take care. Bye-bye. Thank you for tuning in to Women Thrive podcast. If you found today's episode empowering and inspiring, be sure to subscribe and follow us. Better yet, leave a review and share it with others. We're committed to bringing you more stories that will empower and inspire you on your own journey. Until next time, keep listening, keep learning, and keep pursuing your dreams.